I have back with me um, David Barton. Very smart man. He is a historian and founder of WallBuilders, WallBuilders, a national pro-family organization that presents America forgotten history and heroes. And this is White History Month, so I want to remember American history. David, welcome back. Happy White History Month.
Hey, Jesse, good to see you, man. Good to be with you.
Thank you, buddy. Happy White History, David.
Absolutely.
How you been?
Busy, bro. Really busy. Lots going on since all the COVID stuff a year ago and still going on now. So legislatively, there's a whole lot going on.
That's amazing, man. So, David, where is America going at this point?
Well, that's a good question. We don't know where we're going because we don't know who we are. We're walking around with a bad case of amnesia. And with that bad case of amnesia, not knowing who we are, we don't know where we're supposed to land, where we're supposed to go, where we're supposed to live. We don't have a clue. So at this point, we're just real confused. And until we figure out who we are, I don't know where we're going. I don't think anybody knows where we're going.
And when you say who are we?
That's the question. One of the things we spent a lot of time on this last year is, and by the way, you kind of see, I'm surrounded here with about 120,000 items from before 1812 on the table here that you can't see. I'm full of items from the 1840s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s.
I love what I'm looking at.
Based on what we've got in school, we don't have a clue who we are.
Yeah.
Critical race theory, or whether you want to say 1619 Project, those are great examples of what happens when you get amnesia. Minnesota just a few weeks ago passed a state law that said in the state of Minnesota for the next 10 years, in your American history and social studies classes, you will not study the American Revolution or the Civil War or World War I or World War II or the Holocaust, but you will study the 1619 Project. Well, if you take everything else out of America except that, we don't have a clue who we are. So that's kind of what we're fighting and facing right now. I testified recently in Louisiana. They wanted to go a different direction. You know, Louisiana, a little more conservative than Minnesota. So, and Louisiana, they said, hey, we want to teach the Declaration, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. We want to teach the Civil War, and we want to teach the Declaration. And even in Louisiana, they ended up taking out a whole bunch of that. They took out the Declaration and the Holocaust and World War II. And it's just crazy what's going right now. We're determined not to know who we are and we're determined not to know where we came from. And that's just bad combination for where America's going.
So why are the true Americans giving in to the non-Americans? Because these people don't love America. They're trying to destroy it because they don't love it. But what I don't get, and I do, but I'm saying I don't, white people founded and created the greatest country on this side of heaven, right? And are created on the principles of God. With the help of God, God made it possible. We all know this. Why are the Christians or the people the whites giving into these evil people like this?
You know, one of the things that's happening right now, Jesse, is even good-hearted people who intuitively know that this is not the right direction. We shouldn't be having this critical race theory division in the nation. We shouldn't be dividing ourselves into groups on the oppressed, the oppressor, black and white. We shouldn't be doing that. Even they don't know much history. Right now, only 1 out of 1,000 Americans can name the freedoms in the First Amendment. That's deplorable. If you don't know what they are, you won't protect them and you won't live them.
Yeah.
We have the same kind of thing with even our government. Right now, we deal with legislators on a regular basis. And right now, I guess the way to say it right now is 62% of Americans cannot name the 3 branches of government, and 48% of elected officials cannot name the 3 branches of government. If you don't know stuff that basic, you don't know what government's supposed to do, what the role is. You know nothing about who you are as a people. You look at immigrants coming into America. Within 3 months, they can take that immigration test. They can become immigrants. 92% of immigrants pass the immigration test. Had a state recently said, well, I wonder if our kids know as much as immigrants do. Only 7% of high school seniors could pass the immigration test. So even for people who are not on an agenda, they're not part of trying to tear the nation in half, even those people don't have a clue who we are as a people. So we've been so badly educated for the last generation or so that even those who don't want to join in all the fight and the division and tearing America apart don't know how to defend it. They don't know how to come to its aid, and that's a problem.
Why are the parents allowing their children to be dumbed down in this way? They're just letting it happen. Why?
I think parents now are kind of awake. They were always thinking, well, that's another crazy, that's Chicago schools that does that. That's not my schools in Southern Alabama or West Texas or Northwest Minnesota or wherever. They would see articles and see reports and say, yeah, it's not my school. Hey, I go to church with some of those to school teachers, and they're not that bad people. And so they're not aware. I guess the way to say is we don't even know what conservative and liberal means anymore. A recent poll with CNN viewers. I mean, CNN, I think I can easily say that's a very liberal network.
Yeah.
68% of CNN viewers thought that they were conservatives. So we look at teachers and say, well, they're fairly conservative. Well, maybe they are, depends on who you compare them to. But when it comes to actually conservative versus liberal, a whole lot of teachers that we go to church with and hang around with are fairly progressive. They think of themselves as conservatives. They would describe themselves as conservatives, but they don't know. And so we just kind of always assume, well, it's not my school that's that way. But now with COVID and with so many parents seeing, for example, what happened with their online classes or their kids at home, they're going, what? You're teaching what? I mean, with even in Texas, the push last November was to drop the age of sexual consent for children in Texas to the age of 10. And we're seeing a number of states now where they're giving out abortion pills for 10-year-olds. They're giving out all sorts of sex ed for 10-year-olds. And most parents say, whoa, 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 whoa. That's not where I am. That's not where I want my kids to be. Right. But this is what's been going on in schools for a long time. So we saw that just a year or so ago, it was, I think, 3.2% of the nation homeschooled. It's now 13%. We've seen a big drop in the percentage of kids now in public school as a result of what parents are aware of as a result of COVID. And then as the CRT stuff is taken off and we're seeing school boards split, we're seeing schools split, we're seeing parents show up in massive numbers. It's parents are waking up to the fact that the school system is not good. And now they're waking up to the fact that the university system that's teaching the teachers for the school system is really not good. So we're sitting on the verge of something happening. Now, whether it's an easy change or whether it's a peaceful change or who knows what it's going to be, but people are ready for some kind of a change. We just don't know how it's going to work out yet.
And when you say ready for a change, are they ready to turn it back to good? They ready to go back to what is right?
Yes and no. They're ready to go back to what they think is right and what they know is right. But again, we're dealing with a whole nation that doesn't know a whole lot about itself.
Yeah.
They know some about it themselves, and what they are seeing, they know is not right. Whether they can get back to what is right, don't know. I was just in a rural part of Kansas just this last week, and actually they were concerned about critical race theory. And I said, okay, let me just show you some things. I just started going through a bunch of, I'll pick this out as a book. These two books, for people on radio, they can't see, but I got two really big books in my hand. These are from the 1800s, and they are full of hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of Black heroes, military heroes that were the major causes for battles that we won. And I just started going through those names with a lot of those white folk, and they'd never heard those names. I said, well, you think if most Americans knew that we had a heritage like that they wouldn't put up with even tolerating the concept of oppressed and oppressor critical race theory, or that we're the only nation in the world where that whites fought whites and freed blacks as a result. You think that might make a difference? Or if they knew that we were the first nation in the world to ban the global slave trade, we were the fourth nation in the world to ban slavery, that, I just went through all the numbers. They'd never heard the numbers before. And so even those folks, not trying to be racist, just white folk trying to say, hey, America shouldn't be divided, they had no basis for being able to say that. And so I say that if we knew our own history, we would have zero tolerance for the lies that are being taught. But when you don't know history and the lies come in, you say, well, I hope that's not right. I don't think that's right. I don't really. And so you don't have the conviction you need to move forward and be able to just step on some of these terrible movements and stop them in their tracks. And that's what we're lacking right now, is enough knowledge to have the conviction. We have the desire, but we don't have the conviction yet. And that's what we've got to get.
David, I don't know if you know it or not, but I grew up on a plantation in Alabama. at a time when Jim Crow existed.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about those people in the books you just mentioned. I didn't know that about black people doing this or doing that or not doing this or doing that. But I loved America.
Yeah.
And the reason that I loved America because my parents and their parents and their parents loved America. They
Right.
were Christians. They believed in God. They believed in family. They treated all people the way they would like to be treated. And so, and so the point I'm trying to make is, I am hopefully making is that it's not loving America is not based on black or white or what they
Right.
did or did not do. Loving America is believing in God, knowing that we are a Christian nation and that our battle is spiritual. And it seemed as though we've gotten away from morality. There seemed to be no push for morality anymore, the order of God, because you can learn the history of America, but if you don't have love in your heart, it's not going to help.
You are exactly right, brother. And I cannot agree enough about the push away from morality. I just recently did a book on that with the current stats. I do a lot of work with George Barton, one of the best pollsters in the nation. And we just kind of looked at where things were in the country, where we were with morality by generations. And I'll tell you, churches are doing a lousy job on this. Right now, the current numbers are 2 out of 3 Americans believe that there is no absolute moral truth. There's nothing really right or wrong. It's 4 out of 5 with millennials, and it's 1 out of 2 Christians believe there's no absolute moral right or wrong.
Yeah.
And so that is the foundation for everything. That's why a lot of this, as you said, a lot of this nonsense comes in because we don't even have that basic love in our hearts, or we're going to determine what our own truth is. We're going to determine what our own morality is. And so we specifically went through just dozens of categories of what used to be considered very immoral behavior. And do you think this is right or wrong? Even lying. I think it was 2 out of 3 young people said that, well, lying's not wrong if you do it with a good motive in your heart. Lying's wrong. I mean, it is. And it doesn't matter how you construct your truth. There are certain things that God, the word of God says are right and wrong. And so there's a lot of slack in that. What we're seeing now also even, and I'm going to jump on the church here because I'm an ordained minister and I'll get right in the middle of that. With 384,000 churches and senior pastors that we have in America right now, calling 500 churches a day as George Barna does, we know that 72% of those churches say they do not agree with basic biblical teachings, things like that Jesus lived a sinless life, or the Bible's accurate in its teachings, or that God answers prayer. 72% of pastors say don't agree with that stuff.
Amazing.
That left us 28% of pastors who do. That's 107,000 churches. So then we started quizzing those pastors and churches, 500 pastors a day. And what we find out is only 2.8% of pastors in America are willing to address the things that are going on in the culture. And so if you're not willing to call out the culture, if you're not willing to call out the congregation and say, hey, what just happened is wrong, and here's why, if you're not willing to do that, then your parishioners are not going to know it. Now, that doesn't exclude the fact that every single Christian ought to be reading the Bible on their own by themselves. They don't need a pastor to hold their hand to read the Bible, but they're not getting it done. We know right now only 9% of Christians read the Bible on a daily basis. So the best source of morality that has existed in the history of the world, we're staying away from. Churches aren't addressing it, pastors aren't addressing it, and people aren't reading it. And so there is no question, Jesse, you're right on the spot that we have a terrible moral crisis in the nation, and it's self-inflicted. Nobody else did this to us. We did it to ourselves.
I noticed that in America today, that not all, but most black people are leading the way to destruction. They're put in the forefront to just bring in evil, all this critical race evil, this phony June 10th evil idea of a holiday while taking away the 4th of July or trying to, and they're using, black people are happy to lead the way to destruction. And they're using this phony idea about slavery and racism and police brutality. All those things are lies. And I just don't believe there's one person in this world that believe it. Why are white people pretending to believe that black people are suffering because of slavery and racism? Why don't they just tell the truth that it's due to the lack of morality?
You know, that's one of the questions I can't answer. I can tell you that so many white people that I know are good-hearted, and they said, man, if we did bad things in the past, we don't want that to go on. And if we created a situation and if we were part of that racism and Jim Crow, and if we did that, man, we just need to make it. And so in some way, white people have this guilt and they want to do reparations, and they tolerate a whole lot and say, man, I understand why there's a lot of bitterness there. I understand why there's so much going on because Jim Crow, and I wasn't alive then. It wasn't my grandparents that did it, but it was white people that did it. And that's what the legislators were. And so, and there's this thing of really bending over backwards, trying to accommodate a previous evil without recognizing that, hey, a lot of that has moved on. And regardless of what it is, we're told in the Bible in Hebrews that the root of bitterness defiles many. And if you let people get bitter, whoever they are, it's going to get worse and worse and worse. And the more you focus on injustice, the more you'll become part of that injustice.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you become what you think about. As a man thinks in his heart, so is he. And if you're going to dwell on bitterness and if you're going to dwell on stuff, you become that. And so, you know, again, for me, part of this thing is truth. But if I go to 2 Thessalonians 10 through 12, it says that if you believe a lie, a delusion will enter. You will act on that delusion, and you'll be damned as a result. You'll have high consequence cost. And so what happens is a lot of people are believing a lie, both black people and white people believe in a lie. You know, I think we talked last time about how slavery is not a black-white issue in the way that people make it today. Even Carter Woodson, the father of black history, pointed out in the 1830 census, 43% of free blacks in South Carolina owned black slaves.
Yeah.
That black-on-black slavery was a very common thing. You know, if you're going to say reparations, what's Kamala Harris do, since her family was one of the owners of the largest slave plantations? And so slavery is a human problem. It's not a black-white problem. Now, in America,
not at all.
It's just, you know, it's crazy. Here's one of the things on truth that just got me recently. I'm all exercised over this. This is the book Up From Slavery by Booker T. Washington. 1902, it came out. Booker T, of course, was born a slave, freed, became the head of Tuskegee. This is the modern 2015 reprint. And on the inside, it says this book is a work of fiction. Now, you've gone from an autobiography to a work of fiction. And this is what we're teaching people. And if you, Bible says, if you believe a lie, you'll be damned. Delusion enters in your. And this is the kind of stuff that's happening right now. We have such bad information on our past and who we were. We're getting this root of bitterness. We're getting this, you know, and then other folks bend over backwards trying to overcome what they think was a narrative that really didn't exist. It's not because we're not acting on truth.
We're running out of time, Dave, but I do want to tell you this. I know you came out in defense of our monuments and that they should not be torn down. And I'm blown away that in a Judeo-Christian country that they're allowing the enemies of God to tear down the statues and monuments and flags of men who suffered and went through hell to create the greatest country in the world, and they're replacing it with unemployed drug addicts with criminal record like George Floyd and others. I just don't know how the people can sit still and allow that to happen.
Yeah, again, we have that lack of morality that doesn't give us a moral compass. You know, I look at the Bible, and although David did a lot of bad stuff in the Bible, we don't tear those chapters out. They're still there. What David was a lousy parent. He couldn't say no to Adonijah. His son Amnon killed his brother. I mean, it's crazy what happened with David and then his own killing of Uriah. We don't tear that out. We use that as lessons. And that, you know, I can take any statue in the United States, even if I totally disagree with that person, and give you good lessons out of it for what you shouldn't do, maybe. Yeah. But there's no reason to tear that down. I love Israel. One of the biggest monuments they have is to King Absalom. And it's not because they like Absalom, because he's the worst king ever. But you can learn a lot by looking at the good, the bad, and the ugly. And that's what we refuse to do today.
Amazing. David, what is the solution? And tell people how to get your books and how to get to what you're doing.
The best inoculation for this disease that's out there is truth. And right now, you're going to have to teach it to yourself because it's not readily available in schools in a lot of places. You've got it. You're putting stuff out. We put stuff out. A book we just came out with called The American Story covers so much of this narrative that's so wrong today. it's one of the best inoculations for why this nonsense is really crazy. But those are things we have. WallBuilders.com, there's a lot there. We have a lot of these documents, a lot of the stuff I just showed. It's there for people to see and get their feet grounded in truth. And the other thing is you just kind of pick that Bible up, dust it off, and get back in it and start reading it. Because even if your pastor's not doing it, that's not an excuse for you not to know it. And you got to get that grounding back in biblical morality, not your own definition of what's moral and not moral. You got to get biblical morality going again for the nation to turn. And that's on us. That's not on anybody else.
That's wallbuilders.com, right?
Yes, sir. Wallbuilders.com.
David, one last thing. Are you under attack? Are they calling you racist, and are they trying to stop you?
Well, on the Southern Poverty Law Center list, I'm number 3 on the list. So
Whoa.
They've got me as one of the top haters in the United States. And under the Obama administration, I was on the domestic terrorism list because of the stuff we're talking about right now. So there you go.
Well, congratulations. That means that you're doing an amazing good job.
Yeah, telling truth, and they don't like it, but that's all right.
That's
It's
right.
what actually happened.
That's right. Well, David, thank you for your time, and happy White History Month. And if we could be of any service to you, let us know.
Bless you, brother. Thanks for telling the truth.
All right. Thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. That's
See ya.
wallbuilders.com, folks. Check it out. A national pro-family organization. Wallbuilders.com. Amazing. You got to stand up. Another brave white man. Isn't that amazing? Amazing. And don't forget to like, follow, tweet, subscribe, and share the Jesse Lee Peterson radio show, folks. We really appreciate it. We are at war. It is a spiritual battle for the soul of America. And it's going to take all of us to do it.